Shalom, shalom, shalom. I do hope everyone is well. This is the day that Yah has made, and I shall rejoice and be glad in it. Shabbat shalom. I hope you have enjoyed your Shabbat and that you are basking in the presence of your Yah. I want to share an experience with you that I've had this week that was a beautiful experience. I was able to go and celebrate the Feast of Dedication with some fellow sisters and brethren, Israelite, at their home, and it was beautiful. I really enjoyed the celebration. So this is the feast in this time of Feast of Dedication, and this would have been my first year with knowledge, understanding. I observed the Feast of Dedication in 2011 at the assembly where I was fellowshipping, and they observed the Feast of Dedication. Now, I was just in the process, just coming out of Christianity. The Father told me to stop observing those holidays, Christmas, Easter, and all that stuff. And I told my children, I said, He will tell us what to keep, because I didn't know. I was learning. So I went to this fellowship because they kept the Sabbath, and they were calling him by his name. And they said they keep the Feast of Dedication. But when I asked them why, what was it about, they couldn't really tell me why. So I was like, okay. But the celebration itself was nice. It was a nice meal, beautiful meal. And then we went to home of one of the ladies, and had a wonderful time. But I still didn't understand why it was observed, or whether what was the scriptural reference. And so when I discontinued fellowship with that assembly, I went to another assembly that kept the feast of Yah, all of the feast days according to Leviticus 23. And so I went there to learn how to keep the feast. So when I asked them about Feast of Dedication, the pastor told me that they didn't keep it because it was not a command. So I was like, oh, and of course I still didn't understand that, and that's all I got. So I was like, okay. So while I was there fellowship with them for a few years, they never observed the Feast of Dedication. So last year, when I got a copy of this is the Sefer. I got a copy of the Sefer, and I went to read the book of Maccabees. And reading the book of Maccabees, it mentioned the dedication of the temple and the Feast of Hanukkah. So I was like, oh, so I was like, okay. And then I was able to communicate with another sister, and she said, okay, they celebrate the Feast of Dedication, and then I told her I just read it. So I'm going to read to you what I read in Maccabees, because I understand that not everyone celebrates it, and I guess to each his own. Like the pastor said to me, it's not a command, and what that means is that there are feast days that the Most High has commanded Yashmael to keep, which is called his Sabbaths, his high holy Sabbaths, which are found in Leviticus 23. And those feast days are what we call the Moedim. It's appointed feasts. And those are what we are supposed to keep, like the Sabbath, Feast of Passover, Feast of Tabernacle, Feast of Sukkot, Atonement, those feasts, right? They are commands. But this Feast of Dedication is not a command, but when the Most High, when I saw the Father on how to serve him, how he wanted me to serve him, he said to me to learn the customs of Israel. Learn and follow the customs of Israel. So I've been learning. And so when I came to understand that this was a part of the history of Israel and what it was about, I said, okay, we will observe it. I mean, we're not sinning and doing it. There's nothing wrong in keeping it. I mean, you don't have to do it. And so you're not sinning if you don't do it, and you're not sinning if you do, right? From my understanding. Um, there are some persons that go all out and they do decorations and they exchange gifts. But I've expressed I'm not doing that because that sounds too much like Christmas to me. So I'm not doing all of that. But again, if persons want to do their do, then they do their do. Right? No judgment here. That ain't my place. And I am really getting a little tired of all of the debates and long discussions about things in Yisrael that I don't think is important. If someone decide to keep the Feast of Dedication, and that's on them. You know, what is the long discussions about? Okay, but anyway, I'm going to read from First Maccabees just to give an history, because why I'm doing this is because I shared on Facebook recent about Christmas and how there is no scriptural reference for Christmas, right? And I've been encouraging persons. I did in one of the teachings when I talk about religion, that when you do something, make sure what it is that you do, what you're doing lines up with the scripture, what we were given, that is the scripture, right? And so I want to show from the book of Maccabees and also in the book of John what is the scriptural reference or the history behind the Feast of Dedication. So First Maccabees chapter 1, and I'm going to start from verse 11. In those days, when there out of Yisrael wicked men, who persuaded many, saying, Let us go and cut a covenant with the heathen that are round about us, for since we departed from them, we have had much sorrow. So this device pleased them well. Then certain of the people were so forward therein, that they went to the king to give them license to do after the ordinance of the heathen. Okay, and so we're going down to verse 20. And after that Antiochus had smitten Mizraim, he returned again in the 143rd year, and went up against Yisrael and Jerusalem with a great multitude, and entered proudly into the sanctuary, and took away the golden altar, and the menorah of light, and all the vessels thereof, and the table of the showbread, and the pouring vessels, and the vials, and the censers of gold, and the veil, and the crown, and the golden ornaments that were before the temple, all which he pulled off. He took also the silver and the gold, and the precious vessels. Also he took the hidden treasures which he found. And when he had taken all of them all away, he went into his own land, having made a great massacre, and spoke very proudly. Therefore there was a great mourning in Yisrael in every place where they were, so that the princes and elders mourned, the virgins and young men were made feeble, and the beauty of the women was changed. Every bridegroom took up lamentation, and she that sat in the marriage chamber was in heaviness. The land also was moved for the inhabitants thereof, and all the house of Jacob was covered with confusion. 29. And after 2 years fully expired, the king sent his chief collector of tribute into the cities of Yehud, who came unto Jerusalem with a great multitude, and spoke peaceable words unto them, but all was deceit. For when they had given credence, he fell suddenly upon the city, and smote it very sore, and destroyed much of Yisrael. And when he had taken the spoils of the city, he set it on fire, and pulled down the houses and walls thereof on every side. But the women and children took they captive, and possessed the cattle. Then built they the city of David with great and strong walls, and with mighty towers, and made it a stronghold for them. And they put therein a sinful nation, wicked men, and fortified themselves therein. They stored also with armor and victuals. And when they had gathered together the spoils of Jerusalem, they laid them up there. And so they became a sore snare, for it was a place to lie in wait against the sanctuary, and an evil adversary to Yisrael. Thus they shed innocent blood on every side of the sanctuary, and defiled it. So much so that the inhabitants of Jerusalem fled because of them, whereupon the city was made a habitation of strangers, and became strange to those that were born in her. and her own children left her. Her sanctuary was laid waste like a wilderness. Her feasts were turned into mourning, her Shabbaths into reproach, and her honor into contempt. As had been her glory, so was her dishonor increased, and her excellency was turned into mourning. Moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom that all should be one people, and every one should leave his laws. So all the heathen agreed according to the commandment of the king. Yea, many also of Yashrael consented to his religion, and sacrificed unto idols, and profaned the Sabbath. For the king had sent Sepharim by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Yehud, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, and forbid burnt offering and sacrifice and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and feast days, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people, set up altars and Asherah poles and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beasts. That they should also leave their children uncircumcised, and make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanations, to the end that they might forget the Torah and change all the ordinance. And whosoever would not do according to the commandments of the king, he said he should die. Okay, verse 54. Now the 15th day of the month Kalev, in the 145th year, they set up the abomination of desolation upon the altar, and built idol altars throughout the cities of Yehud on every side, and burned incense at the doors of their houses and in the streets. And when they had rent in pieces the Sepharim of the Torah, which they found, they burned them with fire. And whosoever was found with any Sepharim of the covenant, or of any committed to the Torah, the king's commandment was that they should be put to death. Thus did they by their authority unto Yashrael every month, to as many as were found in the cities. Now the 25th day of the month they did sacrifice upon the idol altar, which was upon the altar of Elohim. At which time, according to the commandments, they put to death certain women. That is the commandment of the king. They put to death certain women that had caused their children to be circumcised. And they hanged the infants about their necks, and raffled their houses, and slew them that had circumcised them. Howbeit many in Yashrael were fully resolved, and confirmed themselves not to eat any unclean thing. Wherefore the rather to die, that they might not be defiled with meats, and that they might not profane the holy covenant. So that they died, and there was very great wrath upon Yashrael. So that is the history of what took place in Jerusalem at that time, with the desecration of the temple and the people. And you can hear from that report what they went through. I mean, when I read this last year, I was shocked. And I cried, because I was like, this aspect of Israel's history I'd never heard, because all we heard about Israel was that they were disobedient people. They wouldn't keep the commandment. And to hear that these persons were willing to die before they broke Yah's law, and they continued to circumcise their children. They refused to eat the swine's meat, and they had rather die than to not keep the Torah. It encouraged me. It really encouraged me, So reading the book of Maccabees, and if those of you don't have it, it is a very good read because of the history. I've been saying that this book that was given to us is a history book, and so the books that they would have taken out, I found that they have a lot of history in it, and history that we need to know, And so this was very encouraging. And when I read this material last night in the year 1450, my son was able to make the connection and say, Columbus came in 1492. And I don't know, if that was around the same time period. But this is why I found these books to be very interesting history. Why? Because it's helping you connect some dots. But anyway, we're going to go to 2nd Maccabees, chapter 1. And we're going to look at verse... Let me start from verse 1 so we can get the background. The brethren, the Yahudim that be at Jerusalem in the land of Yehud, wish unto the brethren, the Yahudim that are throughout Mizraim, health and peace. Elohim be gracious unto you, and remember his covenant that he made with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, his faithful servants, and give you all a heart to serve him, and to do his will with a good courage and a willing mind, and open your hearts in his Torah and commandments, and send you peace, and hear your prayers, and be at one with you, and never forsake you in time of trouble. And now we be here praying for you. What time has Demetrius reigned in the 190th year? We, the Yahudim, wrote unto you in the extremity of trouble that came upon us in those years, from the time that Jachin and his company revolted from the Holy Land and kingdom, and burned the porch, and shed innocent blood. Then we prayed unto Yahuwah, and were heard. We offered also sacrifice and fine flour, and lighted the lamps, and set forth the loaves. But now see that you keep the feast of Hanukkah and the month Kislev. Okay? And so in verse 18 said, therefore, whereas we are now purposed to keep the purification of the temple upon the 5th and 20th day of the month Kislev, we thought it is necessary to certify you thereof, that ye might also keep it as the feast of Hanukkah, and of the fire which were given us when Nehemiah offered sacrifice after that he had built the temple and the altar. So this would be if you notice the month, the day, and the month would have been around the same time in 1st Maccabees chapter 1 when the desecration took place, the month Kislev. It was on the 15th day. And so it was on the 5 and 25th day of the month that they sacrificed the idol upon Yah's altar. And so the Feast of Hanukkah would have occurred on the 25 and 20th day of the month, of the same month that the desecration would have taken place. Okay, so that's the backdrop, the history for that. And then we have in the book of John, chapter 10, John chapter 10, verse 22, a bracket that says, John 10 and 22, and it was at Jerusalem the feast of Hanukkah, and it was winter, and Yahushua walked in the temple in Solomon's porch. Okay, so Yahushua went into the temple, which was been doing the feast of Hanukkah. Now we don't know if he went to observe it. We don't know, but it just mentioned that it was the feast of Hanukkah in the winter, and Yahushua went into the temple at that time. Okay, so that is the scriptural reference for the Feast of Dedication, also known as the Feast of Hanukkah. And I am just very happy that I was able to observe it this year. Like I said, it was nice to go and fellowship with my other Yisraels, and we had a very wonderful time eating and talking and laughing, and the men were reading scripture, so it was good. And it was good to fellowship, and so I just hope that we will be able to do it again and come together on other days, other feast days, to observe the feast and to fellowship with each other. So I want you to be encouraged, and if you observe the Feast of Dedication, well, happy Feast of Dedication to you. And I pray that you would have enjoyed the reading and the history. Like I said, it's good to be able to show the reason for what you're doing. And like I said, this is Yashrael's history book, even though it brings a lot of, this is the Sefer version, and this version has what they called the lost books, the Apocrypha, I think that's how you pronounce it. But yeah, so if you don't have it, those books, Maccabees, Jasher, Jubilee, Enoch, all those books that were taken out, I'm reading in this, and I find there's a lot of history in the book, in our history book, right, which they gave to us and they called the Bible. And there's a history behind that, but Yah is good, and we know that He is restoring all things, And so, like I said, I read it as a history book, and I just hope that you would continue to be encouraged, and that you too will take the time and read the history. I am personally working on something the Most High has placed in my spirit regarding the Bible, and so I will come to you with that in short order. So shalom, 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 and may Yah continue to bless and prosper you. Hallelujah.